Hey guys, welcome to 4 Minute Masters, 4 minutes to change your life. That's all it's going to take. So we're doing that by interviewing the most innovative and influential people on the planet. Today's guest is the awesome Mike Robbins. Mike, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, man. Mike, if you don't know, is a speaker. He speaks for huge companies. Some of his clients include Google, eBay, the NBA, Gap. I could list forever. But he's also a best-selling author. His brand new book, Bring Your Whole Self to Work: How Vulnerability Unlocks Creativity, Connection, and Performance, just got released. I got it, I said, on release day on Audible and digested it. I actually had to go through it twice because there was a lot in it that I had to take away. I listened to it from two perspectives because I'm aware that you wrote the book for kind of leaders and people who are within companies. However, if you listen to it as well, encompassing the life aspect, applying these principles to your life, I found that fascinating. And in this day and age, I think, as you say in your book, like authenticity, self-compassion, appreciation, and vulnerability are so important. And we're seeing Brene Brown say it. We're seeing Lewis Howes say it. All these big names are starting to fly this flag, which is actually holding the flag up and bringing the mask down.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited. So for 4 minutes, like we do, I'm gonna let you roll on how important vulnerability is, and hopefully people start to understand that it's what our true selves are.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us, when we think of or hear the word vulnerability, it can be a little scary because it seems like it's weakness. We should protect ourselves from being vulnerable. But I love actually Brene Brown's definition of vulnerability, which is emotional exposure, risk, and uncertainty. So if you think of anything meaningful or important that we've ever accomplished or experienced in our lives, it always involves emotional exposure, risk, or uncertainty. And my book, Bring Your Whole Self to Work, is about how we can individually show up as authentically and vulnerably as possible in our work, whatever our work may look like. And if we happen to be a leader or an owner or someone who's creating an environment where people work, how can we create that environment that's most conducive to people actually being themselves and bringing themselves? Because over 17 years of researching this and working with lots of different companies, some of whom you mentioned, I've seen when environments are set up that way, people can really thrive.
Well, it's that truth aspect, and I think it bridges that gap, which I think we see is companies are one thing and home life and being yourself is another thing. And by you bridging this world and having, like, I feel like your series of books, like Focus on the Good Stuff, Be Yourself because everyone else is already taken, it's all like building up to this, and this book is the culmination of that. And I love the subtitle, which is Unlocks Creativity, which unlocks connection and unlocks performance, and that is encompassing of that, because you want your unit, just not you, but whoever you're working with, to perform best, and they're going to do that if they're their authentic selves.
Absolutely. My background, as you know, Bo, I was an athlete for many years. I played baseball all growing up. I got drafted out of high school by the Yankees, New York Yankees. Didn't sign with the Yankees because I got a chance to play baseball in college at Stanford University, not far from where I live here in California, and then got a chance to play professionally with the Kansas City Royals, another pro baseball team here in the U.S., but I got injured when I was in the minor leagues, but basically played baseball for 18 of the first 25 years of my life. And one of the things I was always fascinated by in baseball was that we talked about this notion of chemistry, which no one could quite define, but you knew when you had it and you knew when you didn't. It was this intangible thing. And for anybody, whether anybody's played sports or not, they've all had that experience with that team dynamic. And Google did a study a few years back called Project Aristotle that I talk about in the book, where they studied for 3 years, both in their company and around the world, all this data and metadata on what really creates the conditions for high performance. And the number one condition, so to speak, that creates high performance for teams that they found after 3 years of studying it is what they call psychological safety, which basically means trust at a group level. It means I can be myself. I can be vulnerable. I can make a mistake. I can ask for help. I'm not going to get ridiculed or kicked out of the group just because I fail. And when that psychological safety exists, then you can really have that kind of team chemistry and culture where people thrive.
Well, another thing I love, which is we're trying to get more and more people out in the world doing, is asking for help is a strength.
Yes.
And it's not a weakness. And I know from my life, I didn't start living until I got vulnerable and asked for help from an authentic place. And you cover a lot of that in your book, which I love.
Well, and look, it is scary to ask for help, right? When we ask for help, someone could say no, so we could get rejected. The fear that we often have is we'll be judged. People will think we're weak. right? Or some of us, I know this sometimes comes up for me, we get kind of controlling or perfectionist. So we don't ask for help because someone will do it wrong. So whatever the reason is, but if we can actually step into that vulnerable place and say, hey, I could really use some help. I love the saying, the answer's always no if you don't ask, right? So we have to be courageous enough to ask. And sometimes when we ask, people will say yes, and we'll actually get some help. The other thing we got to remember about asking for help is it's actually a gift to the other person, not just to us, because we're allowing them to support us, which most people actually really love to do.
Someone said it is like by you not receiving graciously is denying someone else's love for giving. And I always think of that, and then your kind of ego comes and go, no, I must receive graciously now. But just before we hit 4 minutes, is there anything like advice or a technique or something that you would just suggest to someone who's starting their vulnerability journey, who's probably never actually been vulnerable in the world and is just about to step into that, apart from buying your book? I know that.
Right. Well, I think one thing that we can start to do, people can start to do, is start journaling just with yourself, having that conversation with yourself, writing it down. Or if you don't like to write, you can even use an audio recorder, but sharing some of your honest, real feelings. And then if you're willing to, find at least one safe person in your life and ask, hey, can I share some of this that I've been writing in my journal or what's going on? That can start to build that sort of vulnerability muscle, and then it actually gets a little bit easier.
But guys, I hope you listen to Mike, and you've literally, your taste buds are wet for this now, because Mike's book has just been released and we're so excited. And what we're going to do on the channel is we're putting this on YouTube. If you comment below, we're going to give away 5 copies of the book to someone who's interested and wants to start taking this journey for themselves. And if you have people around you, I think you owe it to them to be a better leader, not just for your family, not just for your kids, but for your work colleagues as well. So Mike, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And I think you're proving like the Robbins name is the ultimate name in self-help and speaking. I've got Tony Robbins on here soon. I've got Mel Robbins next week. And now I've got you. I've got the trifecta. I did it.
Yeah, I wish I could say we were all related, but we're not. But they're great people.
But check out Mike's work. All the links will be below. Interact with Mike. He's very interactive on Facebook. And man, thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you for another 4 Minute Masters very soon.
Sounds good.